The city was alive with the rhythm of jazz, the glow of lamplight on cobblestone streets, and the constant hum of ambition. It was 1926 in New York City. But beneath the surface of the American dream, a silent killer stalked the night. People clinked glasses in hidden speakeasies, unaware that the next sip could be their last. What they didn't know, what history would nearly forget, is that the government they trusted had made a fatal decision. A decision that would lead to the deaths of thousands. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's real, documented, a deliberate policy. The United States government poisoned its own people on purpose. To understand how this tragedy unfolded, we need to go back a few years, before the deaths, before the panic, before the betrayal. The early 20th century was a time of transformation in America. Rapid industrialization, massive immigration, and rising crime rates ignited a national debate about morality. Leading that moral crusade was the temperance movement, a powerful coalition of religious groups, women's organizations, and politicians who believed alcohol was the root of all evil. Across towns and cities, people marched with banners and Bible verses. Slogans like, "Lips that touch liquor shall not touch ours," became a cultural mantra. The movement gained momentum, casting alcohol not just as a personal vice, but as a threat to families, public safety, and national virtue. In 1920, their campaign reached its pinnacle with the ratification of the 18th Amendment. Prohibition had officially begun. The production, sale, and transportation of alcoholic beverages became illegal across the United States. But instead of ushering in a sober utopia, the country descended into chaos. Alcohol didn't vanish. It simply went underground. Speakeasies, hidden bars often disguised as soda shops or private clubs, sprouted like mushrooms. Bootleggers, smugglers, and gangsters grew rich overnight. Figures like Al Capone became folk legends, ruling with guns and bribes while the government struggled to enforce the unmanageable law. The black market was booming. But here's where things take a dark turn. Faced with an enforcement nightmare, the US government turned to a drastic solution. Target the source of illegal alcohol. Not the drinkers, not the gangsters, but the alcohol itself. At the time, many bootleggers were distilling or stealing industrial alcohol, used in factories, cleaning products, even paints, and chemically altering it to make it drinkable. To stop this, the government ordered manufacturers to add more toxic substances like methyl alcohol, methanol, into these industrial products. Methanol is not just unpleasant, it's poison. It can cause blindness, organ failure, and death, even in small doses. This policy became known as the denaturing program, and it was enforced by the Treasury Department, which oversaw prohibition through the Bureau of Prohibition. But this wasn't just about ruining taste. This was intentional harm. Officials knew people were drinking the alcohol, and they knew that adding methanol could kill. Yet they did it anyway. By 1926, hospitals in cities like New York began seeing a horrifying trend. Patients stumbling in with blurred vision, slurred speech, unable to breathe. Many never made it out. The death toll mounted. That winter, over 400 people in New York City alone died from poisoned alcohol. And that was just one city. Across the country, as more people unknowingly consumed contaminated liquor, the number of fatalities rose. Historians estimate that between 10,000 to 12,000 Americans may have died as a direct result of this government policy. One victim was Mary Donahue, a 23-year-old factory worker. She had one drink, just one, at a holiday party. By morning, she was blind. By nightfall, she was dead. Public health officials were outraged. Dr. Charles Norris, New York's chief medical examiner, became one of the most vocal critics. He called it legalized murder. He wrote publicly that this wasn't about stopping drinking, it was punishment. Punishment for the poor and the desperate. But rather than acknowledge the horror, federal officials doubled down. Seymour M. Loman, Assistant Secretary of the Treasury, responded to the backlash with chilling indifference. He said, "The government cannot be held responsible for those who persist in drinking alcohol that is known to be dangerous." Let that sink in. A representative of the United States government knew people were dying and essentially blamed them for it. But here's the twist most people don't know. Not everyone suffered equally. The wealthy elite, politicians, businessmen, Hollywood stars, still had access to safe alcohol. Private cellars were stocked before Prohibition. Medical prescriptions for whiskey were easily obtained. Elite clubs imported foreign liquor under the radar. It was the poor, the working class, the marginalized who suffered the most. They didn't have connections. They didn't have safe alternatives. They drank what was available, what they could afford, and it killed them. By 1930, the country was in the throes of the Great Depression. The public mood had shifted. People were no longer blaming alcohol for society's woes. They were blaming the government. In 1933, after 13 long years, Prohibition was repealed with the 21st Amendment. Legal alcohol returned, but for tens of thousands of families, it was too late. Their sons, daughters, fathers, and mothers were already gone. Today, this chapter of history is rarely taught in schools. It's not dramatized in popular films or discussed in patriotic textbooks. But it happened. It reveals something haunting, not just about the policies of the past, but the mindset of those in power. A mindset willing to sacrifice lives for ideology, willing to punish the masses instead of solving the root problem. It forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. How far should a government go to enforce morality? What happens when policies ignore the humanity of the people they claim to protect? And most importantly, could something like this happen again? In times of fear or crisis, how easily do we trade compassion for control? As you take your next sip, whether it's water, coffee, or something stronger, remember this. There was a time, not too long ago, when that sip could have killed you. And your own government would have let it happen.